The ship's airlock hissed open with a sound like a serpent's warning, expelling a puff of icy mist into the darkened hangar. Phoenix Drake stood in the center of it, his wrists bound in glowing magnetic restraints that hummed with a faint, menacing energy. Two Crayaxian guards flanked him, their armored exoskeletons glinting under the flickering yellow lights of the Iron Fang's docking bay. Their segmented mandibles clicked in satisfaction as they shoved him forward. "Move, human!" one guard growled, his voice a guttural rasp, almost mechanical through the translator device clipped to his neck. "Try anything, and you'll regret it." Drake stumbled slightly, more for show than necessity, his scuffed boots scraping against the cold metal floor. He tilted his head to glance at the guard, his lips curling into a faint smirk. "Regret? That's a big word for you. Did you learn it just for me?" The guard's clawed hand twitched toward his stun rod, but the other one stopped him with a sharp, vibrating trill. "Ignore him. Humans bark when cornered, but they have no bite." Drake snorted softly, his eyes flicking around the hangar as the guards led him further inside. It was a cavernous space, dimly lit and filled with stacks of alien crates secured with shimmering containment fields. The air smelled of heated metal and the faint, acrid tang of fuel, mingling with the antiseptic sterility of a military facility. Overhead, massive conduits thrummed with power, their vibrations faintly perceptible underfoot. His gaze lingered on a cluster of maintenance drones scuttling along the far wall, their thin mechanical arms delicately repairing a cracked bulkhead. He filed the sight away in his mind, cataloging details like a predator watching for the weak spots in its prey. At the far end of the hangar, Commander Ulrich, the Crayaxian in charge of the Iron Fang, stood waiting. His iridescent exoskeleton shimmered under the lights, shifting from green to violet as he straightened to his full height. His compound eyes glinted with disdain as he observed the human prisoner approach. "Commander," one of the guards said, snapping to attention with a clatter of armored limbs, "the human is secured." Ulrich tilted his head slightly, his antennae twitching. "This is the infamous Phoenix Drake, the so-called terror of the frontier? I expected someone taller." Drake let out a low chuckle, the sound echoing faintly in the hangar's cold stillness. "And I expected someone with a better personality. Guess we're both disappointed." Ulrich's mandibles clicked sharply in irritation, but he waved a claw dismissively. "Enough. Take him to processing. Full decontamination, level 4 restraints, and—" He paused, his tone dripping with theatrical malice. "Cell block Omega." The guard stiffened slightly at the command, exchanging uneasy glances. Cell block Omega was a place reserved for the galaxy's most dangerous beings, creatures capable of destroying entire star systems. One of the guards hesitated. "Sir, a human? In Omega? Surely that's— Are you questioning my orders?" Ulrich's voice dropped to a dangerous hiss, his exoskeleton darkening to a warning shade of deep indigo. The guard immediately shrank back, bowing his head. "No, Commander, of course not." Ulrich turned his gaze back to Drake, his compound eyes narrowing. "You should feel honored, human. Cell block Omega is reserved for legends. You, however, will leave it as nothing more than a cautionary tale." Drake raised an eyebrow, his smirk never faltering. "Wow. You've been practicing that speech, haven't you? Gotta say the delivery's solid, but the content? A bit cliché." The guards dragged him away before Ulrich could respond, hauling him through the labyrinthine corridors of the ship. The air grew heavier as they descended deeper into the Iron Fang, the hum of the engines a constant low vibration in the background. The walls here were a stark, oppressive gray, lined with seamless metal panels and glowing energy conduits. The silence between the guards was broken only by the occasional metallic scrape of their claws against the floor. Drake, however, seemed entirely unfazed by his surroundings. His eyes darted to the overhead cameras, lingering for a split second as the red indicator lights blinked in a steady rhythm. "Nice security system you've got here," he said casually, his voice breaking the uneasy quiet. "Mark 5 surveillance, if I'm not mistaken. Classic choice. A little outdated, but it gets the job done." The guard to his left tightened his grip on Drake's arm, his mandibles twitching in annoyance. Silence. Drake grinned. Touchy. Just trying to make conversation. It's a long walk to my doom, you know. As they passed another maintenance bot, its thin mechanical arms delicately welding a crack in a power conduit, Drake's smile widened ever so slightly. The bot's optical sensor flickered for a moment, and the faintest of beeps echoed in the corridor. The guards didn't notice, but Drake did. His smirk deepened. Finally, they arrived at the entrance to Cell Block Omega. A massive, reinforced door loomed before them, glowing with pulsing energy locks. One of the guards pressed a clawed hand to the control panel, and the door hissed open, revealing rows of high-security cells. Each cell was a gleaming cube of energy fields, crackling faintly with blue light. The air inside was colder, the sharp tang of ozone stinging the senses. Drake was shoved into the nearest cell, the energy field snapping into place behind him with a harsh buzz. The guards stepped back, their expressions a mixture of relief and satisfaction. "Enjoy your stay, human," one of them sneered. "It will be a short one." Drake leaned casually against the back wall of his cell, his hands still bound in restraints. "Oh, I plan to. Thanks for the hospitality." As the guards marched away, their footsteps fading into the distance, Drake finally allowed himself a moment to relax. He rolled his shoulders, testing the tension in his restraints, and let out a long, slow breath. His gaze shifted to the glowing energy field that separated him from the corridor. To anyone else, it might have seemed impenetrable. To Drake, it was an intriguing puzzle waiting to be solved. He tilted his head, studying the faint oscillations in the energy matrix, and a small, satisfied smile crept across his face. "Cell Block Omega," he muttered to himself, his voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's systems. Quite the honor. He reached up and tapped the side of his temple, where a nearly invisible implant was embedded beneath the skin. A faint flicker of light danced across his eyes, and the corners of his mouth twitched upward. "Let's see what secrets you're hiding, Iron Fang," he said softly. Above him, the overhead camera swiveled slightly, its red light flickering once before resuming its steady rhythm. In the distance, the faint sound of a maintenance bot's mechanical whir echoed through the halls. Drake leaned back against the wall, crossing his arms and closing his eyes. He began to hum softly, an old Earth tune with a slow, rhythmic beat. His voice was low, but it carried through the silent cell block like a whisper of something inevitable. Another one bites the dust. Phoenix Drake opened his eyes slowly, the faint hum of the cell's energy field blending with the rhythm of his quiet humming. His smirk deepened as the first traces of his plan began to ripple through the Iron Fang. To the untrained eye, it would appear as nothing more than the routine flickering of lights or the occasional stutter in an energy conduit. But to Drake, every flicker was a thread being unraveled, every stutter a piece of the puzzle falling into place. Above his cell, the camera rotated a fraction too far before correcting itself. Across the corridor, a maintenance bot paused in its endless loop of repairs, emitting a faint beep before resuming its duties. Drake caught the movement out of the corner of his eye and let out a low chuckle. "Showtime," he murmured. The quiet hum of his cell was interrupted by the heavy stomp of armored feet. Two Craxian guards approached, their mandibles twitching with impatience as they deactivated the energy field. One of them gestured sharply with a claw. "Out! You're scheduled for processing." Drake stretched lazily, his magnetic restraints humming faintly as he stepped forward. "Processing. Sounds like a blast. What do I get? A tour of your state-of-the-art torture facilities? Complimentary breakfast?" "Silence." The taller guard jabbed at him with a stun rod, the crackling energy stopping just short of his ribs. Drake raised his hands in mock surrender, his smirk never fading. As they led him down the dimly lit corridor, Drake's eyes darted to the overhead conduits. Tiny sparks of light danced along the edges, almost imperceptible, but enough to confirm what he already knew. The ship's systems were listening. The guards shoved him into a small, sterile room dominated by a reinforced chair that bristled with restraints and scanning equipment. The air was sharp with the tang of disinfectant and the metallic bite of machinery. The lead guard sneered as he gestured toward the chair. "Sit!" Drake complied without a word, settling into the chair with an exaggerated sigh. The restraints snapped shut around his wrists and ankles, and the scanning equipment hummed to life, bathing him in a pale, flickering light. "This is adorable," Drake said, his tone light and conversational. "You guys really go all out, don't you? I bet the torture droids come with premium sound systems." The guard ignored him, inputting commands into a nearby console. A series of holographic displays lit up, showing rotating images of Drake's physical and neural scans. The second guard leaned closer, his mandibles twitching with curiosity. "His brain activity is unusually stable. For a human primitive species," the first guard muttered, dismissively waving a claw. "Their neural pathways are barely evolved." Drake's smirk widened. "Barely evolved, huh? Funny, considering how easily I can follow all your security protocols. Who designed this system? A trainee?" Before the guards could respond, the scanning equipment sputtered, emitting a high-pitched whine. The holographic displays flickered, distorted lines streaking across the images. The guards exchanged uneasy glances as the machinery stuttered, then froze entirely. "What's wrong with it?" one guard demanded, jabbing at the console. The other hissed in frustration. "It must be a power fluctuation. We've been having issues all morning." Drake leaned back in the chair, his restraints creaking slightly. "Weird, right? Almost like your ship's systems aren't as robust as you think." The guards ignored him, their claws clicking frantically over the console. Behind them, the maintenance bot that had been following Drake earlier rolled into the room, its optical sensor glowing faintly. Drake's eyes flicked to it, and for a split second the corner of his mouth twitched upward. "Hey, fellas," Drake said casually. "You might want to check your cameras. I think someone's messing with them." The lead guard turned sharply, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "What are you talking about?" Drake shrugged, nodding toward the corner of the room. "See for yourself." The guard glanced at the overhead camera, which had begun rotating erratically. Its red indicator light blinked rapidly, almost as if in a panic. Before he could react, the lights in the room dimmed, and the maintenance bot let out a high-pitched beep. "What's it doing?" the second guard demanded, stepping back as the bot whirred to life, its mechanical arms extending ominously. The bot sprayed a jet of cleaning fluid directly at the guards, the acrid substance hissing as it splattered across their armor. They stumbled back, their claws flailing as they tried to wipe it off. Drake took advantage of the chaos, subtly tilting his head to activate the neural implant hidden beneath his temple. The restraints around his wrists hummed and then released with a faint click. He slipped his hands free, flexing his fingers with a satisfied grin. "Thanks for the assist, buddy," he said softly, glancing at the maintenance bot. The bot beeped again, almost cheerfully, before retreating into the corridor. Drake rose from the chair, his movements swift and fluid. The guards, still blinded and disoriented, barely noticed as he slipped past them into the hallway. He moved quickly, his boots silent against the cold metal floor as he headed toward the maintenance tunnels. The corridors were a maze of dim lighting and hissing conduits, but Drake navigated them with ease. His neural implant projected a faint holographic map in his vision, highlighting the ship's structural weaknesses and patrol routes. He reached a junction and paused, pressing himself against the wall as the faint clatter of approaching guards echoed through the passage. A quick glance at the map revealed an access hatch above him, leading to a ventilation shaft. He leaped up, gripping the edge of the hatch and pulling himself inside just as the guards rounded the corner. Drake crawled through the shaft, his breath steady and measured. The metal walls were cold against his palms, and the air was thick with the scent of machine oil. He paused at a grate overlooking the ship's central power distribution hub. Below, a tangle of conduits and glowing energy nodes pulsed rhythmically, like the heartbeat of a sleeping beast. "This'll do nicely," he murmured. He reached into the pocket of his jacket, confiscated but not entirely searched, and pulled out a small, nondescript device. It was no larger than a coin, but its surface shimmered with faint lines of circuitry. He pressed it against the edge of the grate, watching as it adhered seamlessly to the metal. "Phase 1 complete," he whispered, a note of satisfaction in his voice. The sound of approaching footsteps jolted him back into motion. He slid further along the shaft, his mind already racing through the next steps of his plan. every flicker of light, every stutter in the ship's systems. It was all leading to something bigger. As he disappeared into the shadows, the device he'd left behind began to blink faintly, its pulse perfectly synchronized with the rhythms of the Iron Fang's power grid. The game had only just begun. The device blinked steadily where Phoenix Drake had left it, pulsing in rhythm with the Iron Fang's power grid. Its faint glow cast eerie shadows over the central power distribution hub, a labyrinth of conduits and energy nodes. Above, Drake crept silently through the ventilation shaft, every movement precise and deliberate. The faint hum of the ship's systems was now laced with a subtle, almost imperceptible irregularity. It was starting. Far below in the ship's command center, Commander Ulrich paced back and forth, his claws clicking sharply against the metal floor. His exoskeleton shimmered an agitated shade of dark green as he stared at the central display, which flickered with intermittent static. "Report!" he barked, his compound eyes narrowing at his technical officer, a younger Crayaxian who was frantically typing at their console. "Sir, we've been experiencing minor fluctuations in the power grid," the officer replied, their antennae twitching nervously. "I've run diagnostics, but the systems show no anomalies." Ulrich's mandibles clicked sharply in irritation. "No anomalies? Then why is the surveillance network behaving like a drunken Torvan eel?" As if on cue, the display screens around them began cycling erratically through various camera feeds, corridors, detention blocks, the mess hall. For a moment, the screen settled on a maintenance bot performing an inexplicable jig in a supply closet before switching back to static. The technical officer fumbled for an explanation. It could be residual interference from the central AI. "Fix it," Ulrich snapped. "Now." Meanwhile, Drake had exited the ventilation shaft and slipped into a maintenance corridor, a dimly lit tunnel lined with access panels and tool lockers. He moved with the confidence of someone who already owned the place, his neural implant feeding him real-time data on the ship's systems. "Time for a little fun," he muttered, pulling a small, sleek device from the lining of his boot. It was a wireless interface unit, modified to bypass even the most advanced encryption protocols. He pressed it against a nearby access panel, and a faint blue light illuminated his face as the device synced with the ship's network. From his pocket, he retrieved another tiny tool, a simple screwdriver. He popped open the panel, exposing a tangle of wires that glowed faintly with energy. Drake's hands moved with practiced ease, rerouting connections and inserting the interface unit directly into the ship's power grid. "Let's see how you handle a little creative chaos," he said, a wicked grin spreading across his face. Back in the detention block, things were already starting to go wrong. The energy fields of the high-security cells began flickering, their usual steady hum replaced by a faint, erratic buzz. One of the guards stationed nearby noticed the disturbance and approached cautiously, his plasma rifle held at the ready. "Cell block Omega reporting energy fluctuations," he said into his communicator, requesting... Before he could finish, the lights in the corridor dimmed and then surged back to full brightness, accompanied by a sharp, high-pitched tone. The energy field stabilized for a moment before shutting off completely. Every prisoner in the block stared in stunned silence as their cells opened simultaneously with a soft hiss. The guard froze, his claws tightening on his weapon. This is impossible." Across the ship, similar anomalies were playing out. In the mess hall, maintenance bots began spinning in circles, their spray nozzles releasing jets of cleaning fluid at random. One bot approached a Craxian guard and beeped cheerfully before squirting a foamy substance onto their face. "By the stars, what is happening?" the guard shouted, clawing at the foam. In the barracks, personal terminals flickered on and off, displaying cryptic messages in what appeared to be ancient Earth script. One read, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" Another simply blinked the word "fun" in large, cheerful letters. Drake, watching the chaos unfold through his neural implant's interface, couldn't suppress a chuckle. He adjusted a few parameters on his interface unit, and the ship's environmental controls began to stutter. In one corridor, the temperature dropped sharply, frost creeping across the walls. In another, it spiked to sweltering heat, causing guards to shed pieces of their armor in discomfort. In the command center, Ulrich was seething, His scales had darkened to a near-black shade of fury, and his claws scraped the edge of the console as he leaned over his technical officer. "Explain this madness," he demanded. "How is our most secure ship falling apart?" The technical officer's mandibles quivered as they scrambled to make sense of the data. "Sir, it's as if the systems are being manipulated. But I can't find the source." "Then find it!" Ulrich roared. Drake's voice crackled through the comm system, low and mocking. "Having a rough day, Commander? I told your guards to upgrade your encryption. Guess they didn't listen." Ulrich's compound eyes widened in shock. "How?" The displays in the command center suddenly lit up, showing a live feed of Drake standing in a maintenance corridor, leaning casually against a wall with his arms crossed. He raised a hand and gave a lazy wave. "Miss me?" he said, his smirk infuriatingly smug. Ulrich's claws clenched into fists. "You insolent creature! Guards! Track his location and capture him at once!" Drake tilted his head slightly, as if considering the order. "Sure, send your guards. I'll even give them a head start. But fair warning, you might want to check on your weapon systems first." Ulrich turned sharply to his weapons officer. "Status?" The officer hesitated, his antennae twitching. "Sir, the weapons lockers are offline. And the rifles?" "What about the rifles?" Ulrich demanded. The officer gulped. "They've been modified. They only fire harmless holograms now." As if to prove the point, a nearby guard tried to test his plasma rifle, only for it to emit a small holographic banner that read, "Bang," in cheerful letters. Drake's laughter echoed through the ship's speakers. "You see, Commander, the problem with your arrogance is that you assumed I was just another prisoner. You never considered that I might be the smartest person on this ship." The maintenance corridor lights dimmed as Drake disappeared into another ventilation shaft, his laughter fading into the distance. Ulrich slammed his claw onto the console, his entire frame trembling with rage. "Find him! Shut down the entire network if you have to. I want that human in chains." But deep in the heart of the Iron Fang, Drake was already 3 steps ahead. His neural implant buzzed faintly as he uploaded the next phase of his plan. The ship's AI, now under his influence, began rerouting power from critical systems to non-essential ones, creating a cascading series of malfunctions that spread like wildfire. In the engine room, the primary reactor flickered ominously. In the detention block, prisoners stared in awe as the energy fields began cycling through an array of neon colors, accompanied by faint strains of Earth music playing from hidden speakers. Drake grinned as he settled into a small alcove, his back against the wall and his interface unit in hand. The Crayaxians thought they'd caught a simple human mercenary, but they were about to learn the hard way that Phoenix Drake wasn't just another prisoner. He was their worst nightmare, and he wasn't finished yet. Phoenix Drake adjusted his position in the cramped maintenance alcove, his interface unit glowing faintly as streams of code danced across its tiny screen. Through his neural implant, the ship's system fed him updates in real time. Power fluctuations, rerouted protocols, guards scrambling to respond to the chaos he had unleashed. The rhythm of the disruption was almost musical, each malfunction and panic-stricken response part of a symphony only he could conduct. In the distance, the sound of rushing footsteps echoed down the dimly lit corridors, growing louder with each passing second. Drake smiled to himself. Right on schedule. The Crayaxians were predictable. So very predictable. "Let's up the tempo," he muttered, fingers dancing over the interface unit's controls. With a final command, the ship's AI, which had once been a cold, calculating overseer, suddenly shifted tone. Across the Iron Fang, a cheerful, almost childlike voice echoed through the speakers. "Attention, crew!" it chirped. "Today's forecast. Widespread malfunctions, with a high chance of embarrassment. Have a nice day." Commander Ulrich stood rigid in the command center. His exoskeleton darkened to an almost metallic black, a visual representation of his barely contained fury. Every console around him blinked erratically, displaying an incoherent mix of warning messages, camera feeds, and random Earth memes. "What is happening?" he roared, his claws raking the edge of a nearby console. The technical officer, looking more frazzled by the second, stammered, "Sir, The AI, it's, it's been completely compromised. It's responding to the human's inputs. I can't override it. The command screen suddenly went dark before flickering back to life, displaying a live feed of Phoenix Drake sitting cross-legged on the floor of a maintenance tunnel. He leaned casually against the wall, one hand holding the interface unit while the other waved lazily at the camera. "Hey there, Commander," Drake said, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "How's the weather up there?" "Bit stormy, I'd imagine." Ulrich's mandibles twitched violently. "Human, I will see you disassembled for this insolence." Drake laughed, the sound echoing through the ship like a taunt. "Big words for someone whose command center is currently running on what I'd describe as borrowed time. You might want to sit down for this next part. It's about to get complicated." Before Ulrich could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Lights flickered and dimmed as a series of controlled power surges rippled through the Iron Fang. In the detention block, the colorful energy fields destabilized completely, releasing prisoners who immediately began cheering or scrambling for cover. In the armory, the remaining functional weapons turned themselves into harmless novelty items, projecting holograms of cartoonish explosions. "Systems are cascading," the technical officer cried out. "I'm detecting power surges across all decks." "Shut them down," Ulrich barked. "All of them." The officer frantically tapped at his console, but the screens only blinked back a mocking error message. "Oops, try again." "Do you like riddles, Commander?" Drake's voice chimed in again. "Here's one for you. How does a human take over an entire ship without lifting a finger?" "Oh, wait, never mind. I already know the answer." In another part of the ship, a squad of Crayaxian guards sprinted through the mess hall, their plasma rifles clutched tightly. The once sterile dining area was now a chaotic scene. Maintenance bots spun in synchronized dances to Earth music, tables floated in zero gravity due to localized environmental malfunctions, and holographic confetti rained down from overhead projectors. One guard stopped in his tracks, pointing at the wall. "Look!" Spray-painted in bold letters, likely with stolen cleaning chemicals, was a simple message. "Having fun yet?" The guards exchanged uneasy glances. This is madness," one of them muttered. Back in the command center, Ulrich's composure was unraveling by the second. His claws dug deep grooves into the armrest of his chair as he watched the chaos unfold on the monitors. Prisoners roamed free, guards were incapacitated by malfunctioning equipment, and the ship's once loyal AI seemed to delight in their suffering. "How are we being outmaneuvered by one human?" Ulrich snarled. Drake's face reappeared on the main screen, his grin wide and unrepentant. "You really want to know? Fine. Let me break it down for you, step by step." The screen shifted to a schematic of the Iron Fang, its various systems highlighted in glowing lines. As Drake spoke, the schematic updated to show the specific vulnerabilities he had exploited. "Step 1, Drake began, ticking off on his fingers. "Let myself get captured. Easy enough. Your intelligence network is a joke. Step 2, map out the ship's systems. Every so-called escape attempt, just me gathering data. I've known how to break out of this tub since day 1. Step 3, build trust. I mean, your maintenance bots love me now. They practically do my bidding." Ulrich slammed his fist against the console, shattering part of the display. "You insolent—" Drake interrupted, wagging a finger at the camera. "Temper, Commander, we're not done yet." The schematic zoomed in on the detention block and power grid. "Step 4, exploit your overconfidence. Seriously, putting a human in charge of the galaxy's most hackable ship systems? Bold move." The screen cut back to Drake, who leaned forward, his grin fading into something colder. "And step 5, turn your arrogance against you. This ship isn't yours anymore, Ulrich. It's mine." Ulrich's claws trembled with fury. "You think this is over, human? We still have—" "Nothing," Drake interrupted sharply. His voice lost its humor, replaced by a razor-edged calm. "You have nothing. Your weapons are toys. Your AI is my personal assistant. And your crew? Let's just say they're a bit preoccupied." On cue, the ship's speakers erupted with the sound of mechanical laughter. The AI chimed in, its voice gleeful. "Would you like a status update, Commander?" Prisoners. Free. Guards. Disoriented. Chaos level. Delightful. Drake leaned back, his smirk returning. You know, I was going to just walk out of here and leave you with a little embarrassment. But now I think I'll take the whole ship. Ulrich's compound eyes widened. You wouldn't dare. Watch me, Drake said simply. With a final keystroke, he activated the final phase of his plan. The ship shuddered violently as the AI rerouted all remaining power to the engines. The lights dimmed, the hum of the systems reached a crescendo, and the Iron Fang began to tilt, slowly but unmistakably. AI, set a course for open space, Drake commanded, his voice calm and authoritative. We've got a galaxy to explore. Course set, the AI chirped. And might I say, Captain, your sense of timing is impeccable. Ulrich collapsed into his chair, defeated. Around him, the command center's screens now displayed a single message. Under new management. As the ship surged forward, Drake stood, dusting himself off. He tapped into the ship's internal comms, broadcasting his voice across every deck. Attention, crew of the Iron Fang, he announced. Congratulations on your promotion to prisoners. Don't worry, though. I've upgraded your accommodations. Welcome to the age of human ingenuity. Enjoy the ride. With that, Phoenix Drake stepped out of the shadows, ready to claim his prize. Phoenix Drake strolled onto the bridge of the Iron Fang, his boots clicking softly against the polished metal floor. The air hummed with the faint vibrations of a ship now under his control. Around him, the bridge's once bustling Craxian crew were subdued, restrained in high-tech bindings that pulsed with the same magnetic energy they'd used to capture him. Their commander Ulrich slumped in the captain's chair, his exoskeleton a muted, defeated gray. Well, Drake said, hands clasped casually behind his back as he surveyed the scene. I've got to hand it to you, Commander. This ship is a beauty, sleek, powerful, and, might I add, embarrassingly easy to hack. Ulrich's mandibles clicked weakly, his compound eyes narrowing. You won't get away with this, human. The Empire will hunt you down. Drake tilted his head, pretending to consider the threat. Maybe, but here's the thing about your Empire. They're slow, bureaucratic. They'll be too busy filing reports about how their supposedly secure prison transport became a flying circus to actually do anything. The ship's AI chimed in, its cheerful voice reverberating through the bridge. Flying circus status, confirmed, current chaos level, delightful. Drake grinned and gave the ceiling a thumbs up. Thanks, buddy. Now let's get to business. He turned his attention back to the restrained crew. Let's review how we got here, shall we? It's important to learn from our mistakes. Well, your mistakes. I, of course, performed flawlessly. Behind him, the main display screen lit up, showing a hastily compiled slideshow. The first slide featured a schematic of the Iron Fang, overlaid with bold red text, How to Lose a Ship in 5 Easy Steps. Drake gestured dramatically toward the screen. Step 1. Assume humans are stupid. Big mistake, by the way. We're not just smart, we're sneaky. He clicked to the next slide, which displayed an image of a Craxian guard, looking bewildered while holding a plasma rifle labeled BANG in neon letters. Step 2. Underestimate your prisoner. Pro tip, if someone lets themselves get captured, maybe consider why. The restrained crew squirmed uncomfortably, their antennae twitching in frustration. Ulrich hissed under his breath. You're nothing but a pest. A pest? Drake feigned offense. Commander, I've just commandeered your flagship, turned your AI into my co-pilot, and broadcasted your greatest humiliation to half the galaxy. A pest doesn't do that. A genius does. The slideshow advanced to a video clip. Footage of Craxian guards flailing helplessly as maintenance bots sprayed them with confetti. A jaunty Earth tune played in the background. Drake leaned against the console, suppressing a laugh. Step 3. Fail to adapt. I mean, come on. You didn't even try. Ulrich's claws twitched, his voice low and venomous. You've sealed your fate. The Empire will see this as an act of war. Drake raised an eyebrow, his smirk fading into something colder. Oh, I'm counting on it. In fact, I've prepared a little present for them. The slideshow transitioned to a schematic of the Iron Fang's data logs. Step 4. Leave incriminating evidence lying around. I've taken the liberty of compiling every violation of intergalactic prisoner protocols committed on this ship. Guess who's getting a front row seat to the oversight committee? The crew froze, their expressions shifting from anger to dread. Ulrich's exoskeleton darkened, his mandibles clicking nervously. You wouldn't dare! Commander, please, Drake said, his voice mockingly sweet. You know me better than that by now. Of course I would. He snapped his fingers, and the AI chirped gleefully. Transmitting data to Galactic Oversight Committee. Estimated time of arrival, 5 minutes. Ulrich slumped further into his chair, his shoulders sagging under the weight of defeat. You've doomed us all. Drake straightened, his tone suddenly serious. No, Commander. You doomed yourselves. You could have treated your prisoners like sentient beings. You could have respected the intelligence of those you underestimate. But instead, you made your own bed. I'm just tucking you in. The bridge fell silent, save for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Drake turned his attention to the helm, his fingers gliding over the controls with practiced ease. He set a course for neutral space, ensuring they were far from any immediate Cryaxian reinforcements. AI, he said, his voice calm, initiate prisoner accommodations upgrade. Make sure they're comfortable. The AI beeped in acknowledgement. Upgrading cells with enhanced environmental controls, entertainment systems, and access to Earth's finest memes. Enjoy your stay! The restrained crew exchanged uneasy glances, clearly unnerved by the prospect of human-designed comfort. Drake leaned back, his arms crossed as he surveyed his handiwork. The Cryaxians, once so confident in their superiority, now sat defeated in the very cells they had built to contain him. It was poetic justice, and he intended to savor every moment. Now, he said, addressing the crew, let's talk about what happens next. You're going to stay here, nice and cozy, while I use this ship to deliver your crimes to the galaxy. Maybe I'll even throw in a few personal anecdotes about how much fun I had dismantling your systems. He turned to Ulrich, his expression hardening. And you? You're going to think long and hard about the choices that led you here. Because let me tell you, Commander, this wasn't just about escaping. This was about sending a message. Ulrich's voice was barely above a whisper. And what message is that? Drake's grin returned, sharp and unyielding. Never underestimate a human. The AI's cheerful voice broke the tension. Message delivered. Current galactic reach, 83%. Trending hashtags. Such Iron Fang fail. Humans rule. Karma is sweet. Drake chuckled, shaking his head. You've got a flair for marketing, AI. I like it. Thank you, Captain, the AI replied, its tone brimming with enthusiasm. Drake froze for a moment, the title catching him off guard. Captain. He glanced around the bridge at the controls now fully under his command, at the defeated crew who could do nothing but watch. Slowly, he nodded. Yeah, he said softly. Captain Phoenix Drake. I could get used to that. He settled into the captain's chair, his hands resting on the armrests as the ship hummed to life under his command. The display screens showed the starry expanse of space stretching out before them, endless and full of possibilities. AI, he said, his voice steady, set a course for the nearest neutral station. Let's give the galaxy something to talk about. Course set, Captain, the AI chirped. Shall I play some victory music? Drake smirked, leaning back in the chair. You read my mind. The opening chords of Another One Bites the Dust filled the bridge, a fitting anthem for the moment. As the Iron Fang, now under new management, glided smoothly into hyperspace, Phoenix Drake allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, the galaxy felt like it was finally his to explore.